welcome to this video. Today I would like to talk a little bit about circling, partly because I would like to spread the word about what circling is. I'd like to share my own experiences with circling, and I think in the process of talking about it, I'd actually like to try and get a better grasp myself of what I think is happening within circling. So I first discovered circling 3 years ago. I was invited by the guys who run Rebel Wisdom, David Fuller and Alexander Bina, to participate in a workshop about collective intelligence and how do we build collective intelligence by bringing the knowledge of different people together. How do you create a sum of the parts which is greater than each of those individuals? So there are obviously different types of collective intelligence in the sense that there's no one person that knows how to build a plane, but there are lots of people who know all the different components who between them have the collective intelligence to be able to build a plane. So that's one type of collective intelligence. But what we were looking at was more the type of collective intelligence which comes out of being together in a field, in a dialogical process, or in the case of what we were trying, we had something like 20 people, not 2 people, to see what happens when we bring each other together, and can there be an honest meeting in such a way that the truth or the logos as it's being spoken can manifest itself in some way that's greater than what we can achieve individually. So they brought me into this project because I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I am very aware of polyvagal theory. I've been teaching polyvagal theory for a few years and therapeutic applications of polyvagal theory, which is, for those of you who don't know what polyvagal theory is a theory about the functioning of the autonomic nervous system, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It talks about the different responses in a hierarchical order of our autonomic nervous system to cues of safety or real threats. So it subdivides the responses into different aspects of the nervous system, which boil down to a freeze response, a fight-flight response, and then a socially engaged response. So this has been used a lot. It's being used more and more in therapeutic environments, and especially in trauma-informed environments, where it has helped and is helping to come to understanding that if a person is in freeze, they need to find ways to move through the fight-flight responses and to get up into a state of social engagement again. So they invited me to come and take part in this collective intelligence experience, and they brought into the group as well somebody called John Thompson. Now, John is a wonderful guy who's become a friend since, and John is one of the 2 leaders. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use. It's because he's both a business leader, I think, and a leader in some other sense of Circling Europe, which is one of the bodies that it's teaching circling around the world. So John was brought in to use his expertise to bring circling to the group, to see if there was something within the circling experience which could help manifest this idea of collective intelligence. Now, I was immediately struck by John. First of all, he just seems like a nice, mild-mannered person, so he was pleasant, very agreeable to be with. But when we sat down for the team meeting where we started discussing the work, I noticed instantly that he had a penetrating truth to him, and he called out somebody in the group about one of their comments not taking responsibility, and I immediately felt, this guy is trustworthy. He will call things out. He will speak the truth. So I felt very drawn to him. And then the experience itself within the collective intelligence lab he ran us through a series of experiences on our own, first of all, where we were invited, almost like focusing, which is a therapeutic style which is used to really place focus on the felt senses of the body and then to notice what's happening, designed by somebody called Eugene Gendlin. So we started with some exercises that I think it was done with eyes closed at first, and just scanning the felt senses to start with, noticing what we're feeling in our body, noticing temperature, noticing heartbeat, these kinds of things. Noticing really, what is it like to be me? What's it like somatically? What are the sensations in the body? What's it like mentally? What's the breathing like? How am I relating to myself? So am I judging myself? Am I friendly towards myself? Is there a strong inner critic? So it's real noticing of what's happening just for me on my own. This was the first level. Then he invited us into a set of experiences where we would do that same kind of technique but sat in front of somebody else. So sit yourself in front of somebody else, notice what happens being in their presence. So now what's happening for you internally. Then after doing that, we started sharing that out loud. For me, being with you, I'm noticing this, that and the other. And slowly we built up to more and more people. So we started on our own, then in dyads, that's with 2 people. Then we went to triads, that's with 3 people. Then I think we went into small groups of 5 or 6 people. And eventually we ended up in one giant group all together. At the end of this experience, first of all, in terms of collective intelligence, we came to the conclusion that we hadn't really managed to get to collective intelligence in that particular situation. But I had definitely been touched by this work. Something about it was an invitation to come into a level of intimacy with myself and with the other person that felt very, very attractive to me. Now, I want to caveat this by telling you a little bit about my own history. So, I studied philosophy at the University of Reading. I think I finished in 2003. I got my bachelor's degree, and I went traveling, largely to discover shamanism. I went around South America, trying to meet different shamans and have different experiences. And then at some point I went to a school called Oasis, which is a school that teaches Californian massage, which is essentially Esalen massage. It's one and the same thing, but for legal rights they used a different name. So that school, Oasis, introduced me to something that I had not known before. So this was a school that was very much centered on Gestalt psychotherapy on the one hand. It was centered on some of the principles of Advaita Vedanta and the idea of non-dualism, and how to get in contact with a deep sense of oneness. And one of the many things that was involved in that training, it was a wonderful training, and I recommend it, and perhaps in another video I'm going to talk more deeply about that and talk to one of the founders of that school as well. But we would participate in a lot of circles, and those circles would largely have a Gestalt-based feel to them, so an invitation to really feel into what's happening, an invitation to practice speaking, to kind of allow ourselves to channel, and practice getting into a state of truth. And through that process, I went from feeling extremely nervous at the beginning about speaking in public and speaking in a group, and slowly I started to notice that when certain people spoke, there was something about how they spoke and where they spoke from which seemed to have a certain resonance to it. It's like a resonance that was impactful. And I think retrospectively, what I sense is that people were practicing speaking from a place which was truthful, and that truthful really, really resonates. You feel the impact of it. It creates a sense of presence, almost like a unifying field in the group when somebody speaks like that. And so I started realizing that the practice was to practice really tuning into what is truthful for me right now. I remember reading a book at the time by Robert Augustus Masters called The Truth Cannot Be Rehearsed. And the title of the book tells you a large part of what I took from that book, which is the idea of coming into presence and allowing what comes up in presence to be trusting that what comes out of that is in itself of value. And so I went through that 3-year training, practicing that. I then carried on as an assistant to the teachers, and eventually I was invited to train at that school, and so I then trained to be a teacher there. And I spent many years and a lot of time probably teaching maybe 2 or 3 classes per week, from around about 2009, maybe the beginning of 2010 through until 2019. I spent teaching groups, leading these circles, amongst other things. So I had a lot of practice of dropping in, practicing speaking from a truthful place about what's happening for me. Now, within that space, there is a sharing of what is truthful, what is happening right now. And yet it was also very common that people would start talking about story, and I myself would do this, tell the story about it. And what I came to realize was that the richness of the sharing wasn't so much in the details of the story, it was in the impact the story was having on the person. And so repeatedly I find myself inviting people, see if you can leave the story to one side and tell more of the impact of the story. Obviously some parts of the story are necessary so that you actually understand the context. And so I've been practicing this for a long time, this dropping in, speaking from a place of truthfulness. So when I met John and he took us through this process of circling, what I realized is, oh, here we've stripped away even more of the story, and there's even more of a authentic relating to what is going on right now in the present moment. And there is a focus placed not only on what's happening for me, which is what I've been practicing more, but within this, it was more of a framework of what's happening for me, what's happening in your world, so to be able to ask you, and then playing with the counter transference of that. So what's happening for me being with you and vice versa. So being with you, how do I feel? How do I notice how your words impact me? So I decided that I wanted more of this. I signed up for a 4-week intro course of some description with John again, and went through that. And again, after each practice, I would come out of those practices feeling more alive. Like my body would feel literally more alive. I'd feel more sense of excitement, despite the fact that there was nothing in particular I was excited for. It's not like I was excited to go and see a Liverpool game. I'm a Liverpool supporter, but I wasn't excited that I was going to go and do something. There was just a sense of excitement about being me, about being in my body. And I'd come out and I'd just feel very alive. And think, yeah, there's something here that's very important about bringing what is whole and real to the experience. So after this experience, I decided to sign up for what they call their SAS leadership training. So I did their 6-month training, which involved meeting every week and doing hours of circling and being with each other and noticing what's coming up and what's happening. And I want to tell you a little bit about what I got out of that and what I see is happening in circling. So I could definitely talk about the benefits to me as an individual, and I think that there's some utility in that. I think the big takeaway from that 6-month process was that I came to the realization that there were certain parts of me, certain aspects of my personality, certain emotional responses, which when they would come up, I would judge them to be incorrect or to not have a place, and I would keep them withdrawn. And by doing that, I would lose interest in what was going on, and I'd pull myself back, and I would feel a little bit alone and not so connected. And slowly I started to realize that there was a process of judgment coming up around the use of my own anger. And so when anger came up, I wasn't expressing it cleanly. And because I didn't express it, I would then drop into a state of freeze, going back to Polyvagal theory. So I would freeze that anger. And then from that place of freeze, I would start to feel disconnected and start to feel bored. So it was this process of it being so intimate with what was coming up and paying attention that I started to notice what has been a pattern without doubt since my childhood, and started, because I was noticing it in this context, started to risk bringing it up, started to risk naming, I feel angry right now, I feel angry with what's going on. And this was the space holder for that aspect of my personality to be given the light of day. It was able to come forth and to be seen and to be integrated into my conscious awareness. And that's still an ongoing process, and I'm sure that will continue, but this is something that is key that I took out of that, and I'm telling you in an autobiographical manner, because I noticed this same pattern happening for many people. So for many people, certain aspects coming up, in some way being rejected, or the idea coming up that this isn't allowed, even if they're not aware of that process, and then them withdrawing their presence from what was going on. So rather than feeling that sense of excitement I named earlier, there being a sense of shut downness, of more opaque or more boredom. And as we went through this journey together with those people, we were a group of, I think there was 10 of us on that 6-month training, plus the leaders, the teachers. Slowly I started to see all of these people start to unfurl, start to open up. It's like they became richer expressions of who they really are. And I have come to the conclusion that circling is very good for exactly this. It opens up the space for us to be who we are and to witness each other, to practice sharing this famous idea of our truths, to start to really see how we can really bring all of the parts of ourselves in a more integrated way than before into the present moment. And how do we use that to actually connect with others and to enter into a process of dialogos or multiple process where we're using our words and we're really practicing trust that what is coming up is of value. So this in itself is a very profound concept, and in some senses it's the bottom of all talk therapy, the idea that the spoken word is healing, and that the idea that the word is good, and that by speaking it there is something good that will come of it, and the idea that we can enter into dialogue with others and somehow bring us to something that's more true, that's more real. And I believe that manifests in a sense of aliveness, a feeling of both being energized and relaxed simultaneously, like a sense of the optimum way of being, so to speak. It's relaxed, it's not anxious, but it's also not collapsed and lazy and slow. There's an excitement and a relaxation simultaneously. And that's what I got out of circling many times. It brings us into that perfect spot, or at least it has the potential to bring us into that as we practice it. So it's been a while now since I finished that training, and I've been using the experiences within the other trainings that I've been leading, when I've been doing the trauma trainings, the polyvagal trainings, the harmonic rocking trainings, the massage trainings. I've been using these circling exercises now for the last couple of years, just in smaller doses, and I have now decided that I'm going to start actually opening up spaces for circling. I'm starting to notice that I'm missing that weekly experience. So I decided I'm going to open up weekly spaces, both in person here in my office and online. I'm going to be doing that in English on the one hand and in Spanish in separate groups, obviously, because I believe that this, even though it's not a therapeutic practice in and of itself, I believe that it has extremely powerful capacity, and especially regarding developmental trauma, and the kinds of developmental trauma where we have not been seen by an empathic witness, which is a phrase that Peter Levine uses, the importance of there being an empathic witness for our process. It helps us validate the emotions we're going through, the things that are happening for us. So I've come to the recognition that circling can be extremely powerful in these situations. It can help bring forth parts of us which, for one reason or another, we have rejected or told ourselves it's not okay to live them out. And this is a fertile ground for exploration, and it's a fertile ground for exploration with others, so that we can explore ourselves, we can explore the other person, and we can explore together what happens when we come together, when we commune together in presence. So I think of it as a sacred practice, really. It's a practice that brings us together. It's a practice that brings us into presence. So yeah, if you feel excited about this, then please go and have a look at this. Have a look at circling. Read up on circling. In terms of the history of circling, it's still relatively new. I think the first circles were around about 1998, came out of San Francisco and the Bay Area, and has been growing since then. Guy Senstock is one of the original founders of circling, and it's slowly been growing. There's now a Europe-based school, which is Circling Europe, with John Thompson and Sean, I think it's Wilkins or Wilkinson, excuse me, I can't remember his name. Yeah, there's circling everywhere online, and I'm going to start circling. So if you want to start circling with me, please come and check out my website. There's going to be links on there to the spaces which are on Eventbrite. So we'll be doing in-person circling. I'm going to be doing in-person circling in Buenos Aires for the next couple of months. Online circling in English and in Spanish. So if you feel that cool, come and get involved. And let's see what comes out of that. All right, well, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and hope you have a great day. Bye for now.